touch that peak. Oh, I've been grinding all week. Ain't no stopping me. Oh, I ain't getting no sleep till I touch that peak. Oh, I've been grinding all week. Ain't no stopping me. Ain't no stopping me. Ain't no stopping me. Ain't no stopping me.
I'm hiding all week, so lonely. I'm hiding all week, so lonely.
Touch that peak. Oh, I've been grinding all week. Ain't no stopping me. Oh, I ain't getting no sleep till I touch that peak.
this other story that we've been watching, former FBI director James Comey, he's now under investigation over a social media post. What more can you tell us about that one?
Yeah, that's right, Craig. In a now deleted Instagram post, Comey, who you remember was fired by Trump in 2017 and later became a prominent Trump critic, posted a picture of shells on the beach forming the numbers 8647. 86 can be slang for remove, 47, a common reference to Trump, the 47th president. Some of the president's supporters took it to mean that Comey was calling for President Trump's assassination. Comey, after taking the post down, said he didn't understand what the numbers meant and that he doesn't support violence against anyone. But meanwhile, the Secret Service says they take posts like this seriously and they're investigating. Craig?
All right. Garrett Hake traveling with the president there in Abu Dhabi. Garrett, thank you. Quick programming note here. Kristen Welker's going to have a closer look at the president's tour and goals in the Middle East, along with an exclusive interview with his former vice president, Mike Pence. If it's Sunday.
Oh, man. Oh, man. Oh, man. Somebody is in trouble. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to ROMA Nation. I'm AK, your favorite guy, and tonight, 8647. All right. So those are two numbers you've seen all over your timeline this week, but do you know what they really mean? I mean, we're diving deep today, and that's just a start. I mean, we all pretty much know what that means, but let's kind of play around with it a little bit. All right, then we're going to go over the current issues with the U.S. and China as far as the future is concerned. And then we're going to conclude our show with the NBA Conference Finals as ROMA Nation starts now.
I'm hiding, I'll be so lonely. I'm hiding, I'll be so lonely.
All right, folks, let's have some fun tonight. But first, please go to riseofmiddleamerica.com and check out our lineup of podcasts from history to news to pop culture, true crime. We have all the shows for your needs. Also, we got a Discord where all the magic happens for ROMA Nation. If you want to be a podcast host, producer, researcher, or writer for us, it's the only place where you can be a part of the fastest growing podcast community on the internet. At the top of the page, let me scroll up. Right over here, we've got all our socials. And of course, right down at the bottom, we've got our merch site. We've got merchandise for everyone. I want to thank you guys for coming in tonight. So please like, comment, and subscribe. Hit that notification button. You don't want to miss a moment of the action. Now, without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. All right, so that was Roma's Rants. Segment 1, 8647. 8647. Is that a political symbolism? Or is it a threat? Right? Because the phrase 8647 has recently gained attention due to a controversial Instagram post by former FBI Director James Comey. The post featured seashells arranged in the display of 8647, which some interpret as a call to remove or even harm President Donald Trump, our 47th President of the United States. Now, the segment explores the origins, the interpretations, and the implications of this phrase. So let's go ahead and start with the origins, right? All right, so what about the number 86, right? So 86 in American slang, let's see here, means to eliminate or remove something. It originated in the restaurant industry, indicating an item is out of stock or a customer is to be ejected or removed from the restaurant, right? So, like over time, it's been used to imply of getting rid of someone or something, old Vegas movies, those types of things, or something that's undesirable. Now, of course, number 47 refers to Donald Trump as the 47th president following his reelection in 2024. So, if you combine those two together, it can be interpreted as a call to remove President 47, which some see as a political statement, while others perceive it as a veiled threat, right? So, before we get into our first article, let's talk about James Comey, right? So, he posted an image of seashells arranged as 86 and 47 with the caption, "Cool shell formation on my beach walk." Like somebody would actually do that. So now you've got the public reaction, right? Because the post sparked outrage amongst a lot of different people, right? Trump supporters who viewed it as a coded call for an assassination. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem stated that it was the Secret Service that was investigating the matter. Now, of course, Comey said that he was unaware of the violent connotations and that the arrangement was suggested by his wife during a beach walk. So now he's bringing his wife into this. But he since deleted the post. He emphasized that he opposed violence and he did not intend any harm. Okay, so let me go ahead and go down memory lane here. All right, so we've got a couple of pictures here. Of course, we're not going live shortly. Let me get that off. All right, so you can see it right here on the sign on the right side. On the right side, it says 86. You can't see the 7, but it's definitely there, right? This is a sticker that was made. This has been on the internet for a while now. They've already got T-shirts for that. Then, of course, you look at, all the different signs and things that they've got. But most importantly, let's go back to the presidency when he was first elected as the 45th president of the United States. So all I did was I looked up 8645, right? Of course, the first person I get up here is Gretchen Whitmer, and she's all over the place because I think she's the one that coined the term. She might not. I have not witnessed her say this, but I'm pretty sure some of you guys in the audience will. But as you can see, the 8645 has been around since the first presidency, which James Comey was the current FBI director for. So of course he knows what this is, right? This reminds me of when someone is nominated for like a cabinet position, and then when they're caught in something and they're asked a difficult question, they play stupid, like, "Oh well, I'm just gonna give you the politically correct answer," right? But yeah, so with that being said, and here's the thing: I'm not gonna sit here and say that, oh, this is from both sides of the aisle. Okay, so obviously we understand how that works. So let's go to NPR, right? So James Comey is under investigation for his 8647 Instagram post. What does it mean? Now, whether you like NPR or not, I mean, it's just, it was the most popular article, so I'm going to go with this one. All right. So the Trump administration is investigating former FBI Director James Comey over a social media post that some government officials and supporters of President Trump are interpreting as a threat to the president. On Thursday, Comey shared a picture on Instagram of seashells on the beach arranged into the numbers 8647, which he says that his wife decided to post. Yeah, right. But 86 is a slang term that means get rid of, and Trump is the 47th and 45th president of the United States, according to Merriam-Webster. The most common meaning of 86, which is roots in the service industry, is to throw out or, quote, refuse service to a customer. The dictionary notes that the term has also come to mean to kill, but the dictionary says it does not include this meaning in the official entry due to its relative recency and sparseness of use. Well, that's because nobody's just going to come out in the open and say, I'm going to 86 this guy. Obviously, it happens, in backroom chatter or whatnot, or used as a joke, right? But it's clear that all of us know what this means. Okay, so let's go to the commercialization and and maybe a political expression, right? So the phrase 8647 has been used in various merchandise, which I've shown above. That includes T-shirts, stickers, hats, and often political protests against Trump, right? Similar to previous political slogans like 8645, which I just showed above as well. I don't know. I've used this term before. I've worked in the restaurant industry. I worked in it for 10 years, right? And I know exactly what this means. But I also know what it means on the street. There's no hiding that. It's not like the FBI doesn't know that. So how exactly are you supposed to figure this out legally and ethically? So obviously the Secret Service has gotten involved and highlights the seriousness in which potential threats against the president are treated, even if they're, in some kind of symbolic gesture, right? Because you can only imagine if that happened to President Obama. Best believe the very next day, or maybe sooner than that, they would be there. They would literally be in front of your house. Right. But then, of course, we have to talk about, free speech. The incident raises questions about the boundaries of free speech and political expression, especially when the symbols can be interpreted in multiple ways. And see, this is how people get away with it, right? Because it has multiple meanings. That means that, I can say this one particular thing and potentially get away with it because it's not, you have multiple avenues to get away from it. So is it a legitimate form of protest, or does this cross the line of incitement? Oh, we all know that word very well. And then you got to think of public figures, right? Because public figures have said things that, are harmful to not just, regular everyday people, to politicians, to movie stars, to, and again, how do you determine what's the right move to make after that? And when you talk about precedent, how does this indictment compare to previous uses of coded language? Because the U.S., especially when it comes to private language that you don't know about, what does it mean then? So, should political figures be responsible for it? Let's look in the chat here real quick. I don't see, there's not much there. Okay. We'll wait here for just a second. Oh, if you guys are on Rumble, just go over to my profile picture, click on that, and it should take you straight to the stream, and you will have a chat box on the right-hand side. I'll bring your chats up and should be able to answer any questions that you have about this incident, right? All right. So Tim Pool kind of explained this in a way that was way better than I could ever explain it. Right. So let's go ahead and listen to what he has to say. Now, I'm going to this is 22 minutes long, so I'm not going to play the whole 22 minutes, but there's like a 4-minute section somewhere where I want him to highlight some of the things that I wanted to talk about, and he can explain it way better than I can. So let's go ahead and take a look. Oop, hold on. There we go.
She said, investigate him. And when you do, if he repeats the lie he didn't know what 86 meant, arrest him for lying to the FBI like they tried to do to many in the Trump administration. Let's play that game, baby. I'm just going to bring it up right from Wikipedia for yous. Because Wikipedia, that's a trusted source, right? 86 or 86. American English slang used primarily in the hospitality industry and sometimes the military. In the hospitality industry, it's used to indicate that an item is no longer available, traditionally from a food or drinks establishment, or referring to a person or people who are not welcome on the premises. Its etymology is unknown. The term seems to have been coined in the 20s or 30s. Military personnel might use 86 informally to refer to scrapping equipment or ending a plan or mission. The op was 86 due to bad weather. It's not an official military term, doctrine, or manual, etc. Okay. Etymology. There are numerous rumors and theories about the origins of the term. Rhyming slang for nix. Nix means get rid of, 86. Part of the jargon used by soda jerks. Walter Winchell wrote about this in 1933 in his syndicated
86, that guy. That kind of stuff.
On Broadway column. In this, the code 13 meant that a boss was around, 81 was a glass of water, and 86 meant all out of it. Professor Harold Bentley of Columbia University studied soda jerk jargon and reported other numeric codes such as 95 for a customer leaving without paying. Perhaps that's it. I don't buy it. I don't. Author Jeff Klein theorized that the bar Chumley's at 86 Bedford Street in the West Village of Lower Manhattan was the source. His book, The History and Stories of the Best Bars in New York, claims that police would call Chumley's bar during Prohibition before making a raid and to tell the bartender to 86 his customers, meaning they should exit out 86 Bedford Street door while the police would come to the Pamela Court entrance. Nobody really knows.
Also, this applied to back in the like 30s and 40s where they used to have speakeasies and stuff, and they were doing illegal gambling. And they'd be like, hey, 5-0's outside, 86 out the back door. That's just that kind of language.
The term 86 get used quite a bit, but let's take a look. Merriam-Webster says it could be used to refer to refuse service to a customer or to get rid of or throw someone out. As a noun, in restaurants and bars, an expression indicating supply of an item was exhausted. Here's the best part. According to Castle's Dictionary of Slang, to 86 also means to kill, to murder, to execute judicially, likely referring to the size of a standard grave being 2.5 feet wide by 8 feet long and 6 feet deep. 8 feet long, 6 feet deep, 86 the guy. No, I don't believe that. I actually think what makes the most sense is 8 miles out and 6 feet under. Because soda jerks being like, 86 is a code we came up with, meaning we're out of an item. What? Why? What? I guess maybe. Like, soda jerks just started writing numbers down, like the rules of the internet. Sure, maybe. 86 Bedford Street. I guess maybe a cop said 86 the guests. Sent them out 86th Street. And then other people heard the cop say this? No,
don't believe it.
They don't buy that either. But you know what happens? Let me show you this first. Source, Castle's Dictionary of Slang, 1970s, okay? To kill, to murder, to execute judicially. Where does this come from? Snopes, 2009, confirming it means to kill. Here we go. Random House, Dictionary of Slang, October 2020, to kill. This is from the New Partridge Dictionary of Slang. This was published 2015. 80s.
I think you guys get the point, right? So my interpretation of this is that this is just a a political stunt, right? Like, I don't think James Comey has a lot going on for himself. I mean, we really didn't hear about his name that much over the past 4 years, and he probably felt like, hey, I need to get myself back into the limelight. But there is one that I saw a couple of rumblings on X, right, about him having a new book coming out called FDR Drive, right, in New York City. Now, why is this relevant? Is because some people are saying that this book may have some relevance to 9/11. Now, why do you think that is? All right. So, the first thing I'm going to do is let's go to James Comey books, right? All right. And I believe he had a book that's supposed to be coming out on May 20th. Okay. Well, I mean, it's past May 20th. It's 21st, which means it came out yesterday. But maybe he was trying to make himself relevant, right? All right. So if you take September 11th, 2001, and you add 8,647 days, 8647, guess what happens? Hey, look at that. You subtract it from the 15th when this came live, and the result is Tuesday, September 11th, 2001. Oh boy. So what do you guys think about that? Right? Because either way, you are the former FBI director, right? Former FBI director, and you have seen this before in Trump's first presidency. All right. And also, to be fair, I also have to add that apparently everyone on the internet that day was a private investigator, and they all thought they knew exactly what it meant, and they were like, arrest him now. There's a reason why we have a court system. There's a reason why we have due process, right? Not that I'm trying to justify anything that he's saying, but this is more, I see this more as like a double entendre. Well, he's protecting himself from the various uses of the word the number 86. Well, it just happens to be 8,647 days from September 11th, and he just so happens to be promoting a book. Like, come on. So, as much as I would like to sit back and completely destroy someone, there are probably people that have done way worse just to sell a book. But I will say this: do better, Comey. Do better. All right. So that does it for our first segment. And now on to our second segment. This is This Versus That, the U.S. versus China and their current issues. All right, so let's do a quick overview of the U.S. and China over the last couple of days, because over the last month, it's been very, very shaky. But last week, Trump pretty much put something into place to where it's like, okay, he brought China to the table. Okay, to bring China to the table is, I mean, especially with everything that's going on over there. I don't want to speak too much about that right now because of, certain platforms that I'm on. But I will say this. Their relationship has like a complex interplay and cooperation of competition, right? Who's going to rise to the top, the cream of the crop? So while both of them are engaging in trade and diplomatic dialogues, there's a little bit of tension, particularly in areas of technology, military strategy, and influence on the global scale. We're going to try and dissect these dynamics and offer you guys more of like a balanced perspective on the current state, because most people are either far one side or the other, and we want to try to come up with a middle ground on that, so to speak. Right. So let's go to trade relations. All right. And let's start with Axios. How will China's tariffs ripple through the consumer prices? Courtney obtained a document footwear lobbyists circulated on Capitol Hill that works through the dollars and cents. I think that meant CENTS, but I see what they did there. So the first thing is the tough tariff math on Capitol Hill. Now, I'm going to try and go through this. I think I know what this means. On the left side, I believe that, these are children's shoes made in China for $6 a pair, right? And then, of course, in America, we sell those for what, $18.99. So we make triple the price on those. So if there's anybody out there that wants to talk about child labor laws, please contact me. I am totally down to talk about that. But right now, we're just going off of the tariffs. Okay. So if you go through all the different costs and how everything is split up, your price that you see on the shelf is $18.99. That's here on the left, right? Now on the right is if it was imported today. You go through, you add the reciprocal duties, add duties to 2025, final cost, new duty amount, final estimated import costs, everything that's in red here, and new wholesale price. You have to make money off of it, right? Of course, each distributor has to, pay for gas for the trucks to drive by and drop these things off. And then, of course, you have to pay workers in the stores to stock these things and whatnot. It's all, great circle of life. Yeah. So at the end, the price now would be, they're saying would be $23.99. Why would you make it in China when you can make it here for $10, but yet you're not shipping it across the entire world? You're just shipping it across the country for a fraction of the cost. It would cost the same amount, simple math. But a lot of people like to ignore simple math when it comes to matters like this. Right? So let's move down. Spreadsheet making the rounds of Congress illustrates the stark tariff era math for the America's retailers, leaving them with two options: hike consumer prices or risk cash crunch that threatens their survival. Well, that would be true if you're not talking about everything else that comes with it, right? So if I have to pay 5 cents more for an American shoe versus a shoe that's made in China, but I know that it's going to American values, it's going to American company, I know that this money is staying here and circulating here in the United States, where there is a better scenario of what happens with that money afterwards. At least I can track it. Then, of course, right? But then you've got places like Temu where you say, oh, well, this is like half the price. But what you don't realize is all the labor, all the blood money, everything that goes into those places. I'm guilty of it too. All right. I'm not going to sit here and preach to the choir and say that I've never bought anything of. There are some things on there that I was like, there's no way I can't get this Most of the reason is probably because I couldn't find it here. But that was before I did my research, and when I did, I was like, yeah, I'm never using that again. But that happens to a lot of people. But anyways, so the U.S. has recently implemented a 90-day tariff reduction, lowering the tariffs on China. And I think it was something like 150% to like 30%. And it aims to ease like inflationary pressures and stabilize our market, right? Because the economic concerns of that is, despite the tariff reductions, American retailers expressed concerns over increased costs, particularly in the footwear industry, where tariffs have led to price hikes. So I'm guessing that Nike has gone full lobbyist now. But we've got, but let's look at it from China's perspective, right? Because this is this versus that. They've responded by reducing tariffs on U.S. goods from 125% to 10%. But you notice how there's a little discrepancy there. So now you know who's on top, just based off of that. But they've signaled a willingness to like de-escalate the tensions just for now. Now, 6 months from now, I have no idea. But I would like to get gloves for my job for, $10 versus $50. But you have to remember that the leadership in China, they're emphasizing industrial self-sufficiency with AI and things like that. And they want to reduce their reliance on foreign imports and bolster domestic manufacturing. But the problem here is that we are a consumer market. They are not. They don't have anything to give, I'm sorry. How should I say this? They only have things to give. Right? So how exactly are they going to protect themselves if they start running out of things in their own country? But again, that's another conversation for another day. All right, so now let's talk about technology, right? Because the U.S. has imposed a lot of restrictions on the export of advanced AI chips to China. With national security concerns, which they are valid concerns. And they've been valid concerns for the last 40 years. But is it specifically China's advancements? Do they want them to be more advanced than us? Well, considering that they have 3 times the amount, actually almost 4 times the amount of people that we do, they can do 4 times the amount of work, and they do it at a lesser price. So that's going to be very difficult. But when you look at industrial, you've got NVIDIA with revenue losses right now, and market shares in China are dropping. So if you go back to China, in response to the restrictions, they're accelerating the domestic AI development, because AI is what's going to rule the world over the next, 500 years. If you watched or played the game Halo. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. All right. No, I just watched last night the entire history of Halo. I'm like, oh geez, is that what's going to happen in 500 years? But anyways, that's beside the point. But they're using companies like Highway. I used to have a Highway phone 25 years ago. A little cell phone. It was about that big. About that big. but it had a camera connection piece I could hook up and then start taking pictures, right? But I couldn't order it here. I had to order it from China. Right? So now you're starting to see the point. But their outreach, at least they're seeing the outreach from the United States as unilateral bullying, right? And advocating for more of a collaborative approach. But since when have you not seen the US bully themselves? Or not themselves, but bully other countries into submission. That's what the US does in almost every industry, right? So I don't know. Like, I don't know why they would expect anything less. So the only option that they have is either they need to submit to the United States or they're going to have to outperform the United States, which is possible. Like, don't take China lightly. They can do it, and especially if they get ahead in the AI, then we will be the outsiders looking in. So let's be careful about that. All right. Let's see here. We've got about 18 minutes. All right. So now let's talk about geopolitical strategies, right? Indo-Pacific, the U.S. is engaging in military exercises, reinforcing commitments to Taiwan and Japan, right? But they have to be careful on that because they can't look like they're trying to take over those areas because it's called the South China Sea for a reason. And then you've got the AUKUS programs and the Quads and Central U.S. efforts to counterbalance China growing influence in the region. So again, have to be careful. You don't want to accidentally do something that pops something off. Now, if you look at it from China's perspective, they maintain a firm stance on that territory, and they, believe it or not, have the right without external interference because that is their area, technically, right? But with global positioning, China seeks to expand a global footprint and economic ties and infrastructure across Asia, Africa, Europe, but they've been doing that for years because they know they have no other choice. They have to abstract resources from somewhere else because they're an export economy. U.S. is an import economy, right? So if they need something, they're going to have to make deals with other countries. And so this is why we have that difference. I mean, if you think I'm wrong, like, please let me know in the chat. Who is this? Free Tory Lane. What up, G-Nels? You crazy bastard, you. All right, so to kind of close this off, we've got economic independence versus like strategic rivalry. So how does the U.S. and China influence their competitive strategies, right? Because I'm going to tell you right now, if U.S. and China got together and said, we're just going to rule the world, who else is going to stop? All right, who else is going to stop the both of us? I'm not saying that's what we should do. I'm just, that's just, thinking outside the box, right? And then, of course, with technology, where's the rift? Like, they're both trying to be top in the world in technology, right? Because whoever has all the drones, whoever has all the missiles, whoever has all they rule the world. Like, that's just the way it is, right? And what about their actions against each other? How do they affect like global stability, regional stability? how does the United States being in Taiwan affect what happens in all of that Asian continental area? And in retrospect, looking at how China could possibly come into places like Central America or even Canada, right? What happens if we go through that type of scenario? How exactly do we defend ourselves? How exactly do we, make sure that there are no shenanigans going on in those areas? So U.S. kind of has to play ball in retrospect. But then again, like I said, places like Taiwan, that's a big no-no for China. They've been very clear about that. Kind of like how Putin is very clear about some of the things that are going on in Ukraine, and they will act accordingly. But anyways, that's all I've got for that segment. If you guys got anything else, just go ahead and jump in the chat. Let's see what we got here. I mean, we've got the Rumble chat, we've got the YouTube chat, we've got the X chat. So just make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. And hit those notification buttons, shall we? All right. So the last segment that we're going to get into today is the conference finals. The NBA conference finals, right? This is very unique. It's a very unique time in NBA history because as of today, the conference finals are featuring matchups that blend kind of like historic rivalries and kind of like new blood right now. It's the first time, right? Because you've got in the Eastern Conference, you've got the New York Knicks versus the Indiana Pacers, right? New York Knicks have not won a championship in 52 years. The Indiana Pacers have never won an NBA championship. Actually, I believe that the Indiana Pacers, I think, were the last team to win an ABA championship before the merger. I think it was the Pacers, the San Antonio Spurs. I think there were two other teams that merged with the NBA around that time. But anyways, but yeah, they never won an NBA championship. And then when you look in the Western Conference with the Thunder and the Timberwolves, now the Thunder, they were the old Seattle Supersonics, which I think in 2009 they moved to Oklahoma City. Now the Supersonics had a championship, but the Thunder do not. Right? So, and again, that was back in like the 70s. So that's a long time for that type of fan base. And of course, the Minnesota Timberwolves have been in the playoffs like 4 times in their entire existence, or 5 times, I think. Yeah, 5 times in their entire existence, and haven't made the past the first round. I think the first time in 2003. Correct me if I'm wrong. And then the last 2 years. But outside of that, the Minnesota Timberwolves have not had anything to be happy about their entire existence. Because I'm a Magic fan. All right. And the Magic and the Timberwolves came in 1989 as expansion teams. And I know what it's like. Minnesota, I know what it's like. We've had the same issues. Now, we've made the finals twice. We've lost both times, but you guys haven't even made a finals yet. Now, of course, yesterday they played against Oklahoma City, and for about 2.5 quarters they were competitive, and then I don't know, something they fell off the map after that. So I wish you guys the best in game 2 tomorrow. But I really want to get back to the New York Knicks and the Indiana Pacers, because this is like a historic 90s, like hard nose, hard fouls. Way back when the 90s, it was the Pacers and the Knicks. And if you guys can remember Reggie Miller scoring 8 points in 8 seconds. That was, I mean, I know Knicks fans are trying to look up my address right now to burn down my house just by saying that. But this rivalry has always been tough. Always been tough. And this is sort of like the whole, I wouldn't say David versus Goliath, but it's like the, tough nosed city boys versus the country boys. Like that's what it was about. Back then. Not anymore. I mean, it's a little different nowadays, but it's the first time that they've been in the Eastern Conference Finals in 25 years. And the Knicks, who are led by Jalen Brunson, who's emerged as a superstar in this league at 5'10". He has resilience, especially with his victory over the Celtics, who the Celtics right now are in a little bit of trouble over the next year or two. But the Pacers, they've transitioned from like underdogs to contenders right now, especially with the rise of Tyrese Halliburton, who is he gives me glimpses. I know some people you just have to think about it and watch his gameplay, but he reminds me of Penny Hardaway on my Orlando Magic, right? Because he has excellent vision. He's tall and lanky for a point guard and has the ability to just get into the paint when he needs to, and especially with this being a fast-paced offense, what else are you expecting? All right, so let's see what ESPN has to say about this.
Obviously, we're covering the Western Conference Finals on site, but we got to talk about the East as well, because that Pacers-Knicks rivalry.
Oh, yeah.
It was alive and well when I was growing up in Indiana back in the 90s. I know you know a thing or two about this as somebody that played for the Knicks. Let's start out with the 94 Eastern Conference Finals. Reggie Miller gives the choke sign.
Oh, yeah.
Spike Lee
There it is.
that big shot.
Yes.
I mean,
8 points in 8 seconds.
like that.
Crazy.
Spike Lee want to be part of the game. Make him part of the game, man. That's what this is about.
You want to talk about the ultimate villain? The ultimate villain in NBA history? This game, Reggie Miller was born as the ultimate villain. Like, him and Spike Lee, those were the greatest fights I had ever seen. It was hilarious. Oh, my God.
Anytime we could get inspired by a fan, anything.
Anything.
4-point play.
9 seconds in
This was
1995.
crazy.
And then Larry Johnson hitting a 4-point play to win Game 3 back in 1999.
Yeah.
And how about this? How about Nuck If You Buck? Jalen Rose and Patrick Ewing. Oh, my gosh. And then the 2000 Eastern Conference Finals. Reggie Miller scores 34 points in Game 6 to send Indiana to the NBA Finals. This is a rivalry that has never gone away, and now they're going to meet, of course, in the Eastern Conference Final.
I can't wait for this. I know the game's going on now, and it's actually tied right now, 125 in the fourth. Yeah, we knew this series was going to be hot. We knew it. All right. Now let's move over to, let's see how much time we got. Looks like we got about 4 minutes, so I'll see what I can do here. But this is what Around the Horn had to say.
To you, Bomani Jones, Around the Horn.
Western Conference Finals.
It's going to come down to whether or not Minnesota can focus and hold on to the basketball. The Timberwolves led the league in points forced off of turnovers this year, one of the highest numbers anybody has had in years, and they are actually now forcing more points off of turnovers in the postseason than they did in the regular season. Minnesota, on the other hand, has turned the ball over 20 times in 3 straight games. They're averaging almost 15 turnovers per game in the postseason. But if they can hold on to the ball, you realize that a big part of how Oklahoma City does this is those points off of turnovers. What they don't have is a second option who can get his own shot. And the thing that Minnesota does have with Randall and Anthony Edwards is two guys that can get their own shots. And maybe I'm just an old school, antiquated old playoff watcher, but dudes that can get their own shots will determine how deeply you wind up going in the playoffs. So the depth that Oklahoma City has is fantastic. And if the refs let them play defense like fouling octopi, then they'll also be in great shape. But if they can't do that, they're going to have to get buckets in ways other than shooting three-pointers. And there's questions about everybody on that team except for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander.
Absolutely. All right, we got to head out of here. But again, thank you guys for joining us tonight. The Timberwolves, they have bigger bodies. They're going to have as you can see, they turned the ball over a lot these playoffs, and it hurt them in game one. They were good for 2.5 quarters, and then after that, they started just being lackadaisical and passing the ball. So, but anyways, with that being said, please go to riseofmiddleamerica.com. This is where you can see all of our news, rants, deep dives, all of our different shows. You can go to the right-hand corner here, and please like, comment, and subscribe on each one. Help us become the biggest podcast network on the internet. All right. But anyways, without further ado, thank you guys for joining me tonight. I will see you possibly Friday. If you don't see me Friday, then starting next week, we will have our 6-show rotation ready for you guys, starting at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with Sunset Rants. Peace.
Hustle in my veins, no rest, no dream, trying to make a way. Whole team gotta eat. No sleep, gotta keep going. No sleep till the world know it. No sleep till the world know it. No sleep till the world know it. I've been moving like a clock, don't stop, no breaks, no rest, no time to flop. Gotta get it while I'm breathing, never taking a loss. See the pain in my eyes, but the vision stay locked. Ain't nobody finna hand me a thing. Came from the bottom, I rose through the rain. Hustle like I never had a meal on my plate. Now we eating so good that the hunger remains. Fast lane, never slowing my pace. Tell 'em